Well, let's talk now about Domtar.
Sure.
Tell us about your business model and how are you organized?
Right, so we have two, I guess, key business models. So we have business streams. So we have pulp and paper. So we sell and manufacture about 1.6 million tons of pulp, which we sell on the open market. So, we're selling that. We sell about $500 million worth of that into China and Asia. I guess you can edit that out, can you? That noise? And then we sell about 3.2 million tons of paper. So publishing papers, photocopying paper, specialist papers for packaging. And then we have a business we've just been building out a little bit over the last few years, which makes baby diapers. So we make private label baby diapers, so store brand. And we have an adult incontinence business, and that business operates in Europe and in the US.
Okay.
So we're about 5.6 billion in sales, listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So we're a good sized business, about 10,000 people. And really making that move. Our paper business is a declining business for obvious reasons. Electronic substitution. So we've had to look at, well, how can we build a sort of another leg to the business?
Okay.
And that's where we came across the personal care idea, because essentially if you look at an adult diaper, the kind of center of an adult diaper is made largely with what's called fluff pulp. And fluff pulp comes out of a tree in the southern United States called the loblolly pine. So we have a large mill actually in Plymouth in North Carolina that manufactures that. So it's kind of a forward integration move for us.
Very neat.
And that led us to buy businesses in Sweden. We just bought the market leader in Spain. So we're sort of building more of an international presence.
Well, tell me about expansion. Who are your customers and where are you looking to move into?
All right. Well, I mean, in the paper business, we're really just looking, it's very much a North American business. So, the big accounts would be people like Staples, Office Depot, and a number of large printers like R.R. Donnellly. They'd be sort of some of our major customers. In the in the personal care business, in the retail side, there'll be people like Walmart and Family Dollar and Whole Foods and all the usual kind of the whole retail environment. In the healthcare business, so this is the institutional business, there'd be large distributors, so people like McKesson, Cardinal Health, those sorts of folks. So in the personal care business, we're building a kind of global footprint. In the paper business, we're very much North American. In the pulp business, we actually have 7 or 8 people in Hong Kong, and we're selling probably about a third now, maybe even a bit more than a third of our pulp into China, because of course they don't have that many trees. It's largely desert, so they want to make paper, but they need pulp because they haven't got the trees. So there we're selling to sort of some of the big tissue manufacturers in China and some of the big paper manufacturers. It is quite a it's actually, what's sort of interesting, when you look at a piece of paper, you think, oh, a piece of paper, When you actually look at the supply chain that goes to make that happen, it's pretty fascinating, because obviously there's logging, there's forestry, there's making sure it's sustainably harvested, there's processing it, there's, therefore making sure it's printable. So it's fascinating. I like it. You can tell I just like sort of knowing how stuff works, actually.
Well, we are here speaking to you for our energy and environment issue of South Carolina Business Magazine. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about your Bennettsville facility.
Oh, right.
What makes it unique and
I
special.
only hope I know enough. I may not. Well, it's interesting. So it has been a classic commodity paper mill where we made photocopying paper.
Okay.
It's also been the base, actually, through the converting site there, Tatum, where we've actually exported into Europe. So it's our major export for paper. As you may know, the Europeans have a different size. They call it A4 versus the good old US of A. So we have to make sure we cut it appropriately. And actually, in recent years, we've invested quite heavily in Marlborough because we had signed up a contract with a company called Apvian for 15 years, where they actually shut 2 of their paper machines, and we now supply all their paper. And that is what they call thermal paper, so the sort of paper you see when you get your ATM receipt, or you get your receipt in a restaurant. And essentially what you see is not actually printed. It's actually, the ink is impregnated in the paper to start with, and so actually it's heat that's making that work. So that's what we're doing in that mill.
Okay.
We call it our Marlborough mill, by the way, for reasons I have no idea why. I've never really asked, but that's what we call it. It's one of our very best facilities, actually. So, in fact, we took our board there maybe 2 years ago to show them that facility.
Okay.
In fact, that's not true, about a year ago. So we're very, I mean, it's just a great facility, great workforce. It's actually interesting. It's a non-unionized workforce. So brilliant working practices and team and multi-skilling. So it's a great mill. Very well led, actually, by a guy called Bill Edwards.
Tell me about, you mentioned the workforce. Tell me what that plant looks like at full capacity in terms of input, output,
Yikes.
workforce needs.
I'm not sure I could tell you.
Oh dear.
I mean, at full capacity, we probably make about 350,000 tons of paper.
Okay.
That has reduced slightly because, of course, we're making lighter grades than we used to make. The workforce, I don't know, Stefan, do you know the workforce at Marlborough? About 350, about the same. And, you know, right now it's as busy as it can be, so it has a great future, I think.
Now, was that particular site chosen by Domtar?
This is all way before my time.
Okay, okay.
As you know, once you build a paper mill, you're inclined to have them forever because they're a large asset. I mean, I think, obviously, the key issue when you're siting a paper mill, people don't site new paper mills much anymore because obviously it's a declining marketplace. But, you know, fiber supply is everything.
Okay.
So it's about fiber supply, and you look around there, you can see, and you really need that strong fiber supply within 50, preferably 50, maybe 100 miles, but really 50 miles. So you need, you know, the right forest, the right trees, the right mix between hardwood and softwood so that you can be competitive. So that's always issue one. And issue two, patently, is can you find the skills?
Okay.
So what do we need in skills? I mean, we need good mechanical skills. More and more, actually, we need good electronic skills because of if you think about the controls that go on a paper machine, you better get that right. So there's now much more software involved than there used to be. And we've had nothing but a great time in that facility. It's been a fantastic facility for us over the years.
Well, one of the things that makes it unique is the arrangement you have with Santee Cooper, which is
Right.
the state-owned electric company
Indeed,
in South Carolina.
the buy-all-sell-all.
Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, certainly, you know, we like those relationships. We have them across the piece. If you look at our power, we're about 75% self-sufficient on power across our network of 15 sites. Well, why? Because there are two things in a tree. There's essentially cellulose and lignin.
Okay.
We want the cellulose. Historically, we do not want the lignin, so we burn the lignin in what is called a recovery boiler, and that generates a lot of power, i.e. steam that drives turbines. But that's green power, of course, because it's carbon neutral power. So a lot of the utilities these days need to make sure they have green power available. So we have an opportunity to essentially sell green power to a number of utilities, and that's exactly what we do.
That's fabulous.
And the good news about that, actually, interestingly, and when there's one, obviously, the fact that it's, you know, it's bio-based power, is that it does enable this industry, particularly in the US, to be very competitive because of its power costs. Obviously, power costs are a huge issue to an industry like ours, whereas labor is less of an issue, but power is a massive issue. So, you know, natural gas at $3.84 BTU, whereas if you think in Europe, it's probably 15 to 16. I mean, there's no doubt that the change in what's happening in power cost in the US over time is going to make US industry extremely competitive on a global basis.
Indeed.
Thank God.
Would you say that green has been good for your business?
It's been fantastic, yeah. So, I'll give you an example. There's a thing called Forest Stewardship Certification, which is essentially making certain that the wood we harvest is sustainably harvested.
Okay.
So we make sure there are very strict rules about how you deal with water courses, how you deal with dead trees, how you deal with the way you harvest, so you don't have this kind of sort of slash look all over the place. And we have turned that actually into a brand that we call Earth Choice, and we sell, I mean, really close now to a third of our sales are in that particular brand, and you'll see that all over the United States and Canada, in fact, just to let the consumer know this is a sustainably harvested and produced product.
Sure.
So actually, I think it has been pretty good for us. I have no anticipation I'm going to get a premium for this stuff. I don't think on the whole consumers will go, you know, unless they're a very narrow, very prosperous demographic, that they're going to buy green. I mean, I think on the whole, consumers want the utility. If they can get that utility and buy green, then they'll buy from you.
Excellent.
So that's actually been very good for us, I have to say.
Excellent, excellent. You mentioned energy costs. What are some of the greatest economic variables weighing on your production lines?
Well, the cost of, I mean, it's really very simple. Wood and energy.
Okay.
So that's why I can run the business. It's simple. So if you look at it, I mean, obviously there's a capital cost, but you have a huge sunk cost in a paper mill. These things cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build. But on a sort of operating basis, wood is the big one. So Domtar, within North America, we'd buy about $1 billion of wood, and we'll buy some of that in logwood and some of that in chips from sawmills, because obviously to a sawmill, chip is waste. So we can use that effectively. And then energy. So really wood and energy are the two big issues. Wood, energy, and maintenance. So we spend about $435 million a year on maintaining our facilities. So that's half of that is labor, half of that is bits. And then we'd spend maybe $150 to $180 million of capital. So wood is key, and energy is also key.
What are some of the issues that the United Voice of Business, which is what the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce attempts to provide,
The United Voice of Business. That's fantastic.
Yes. If you know that our readers and our listeners are
Yes.
the other CEOs and other organizations.
Right. That's an interesting question. I mean, I think education.
Education.
I know it's a mantra, but if you can't find the skills, you
Okay.
can't do the job. And let's be honest, people are the only differentiating entity in a business, really.
Okay.
So I think, make sure that skill set in the school, people just can do it. Now, obviously, we have one issue, which is we need good practical skills. We pay people good money and they can progress. So what we're not much used for is kind of pointless arts degrees. I have one of those.
Me
so
too.
yeah, exactly. Here we all are. So I think the education system needs to work out the kid who is technically gifted.
Got it.
How do they bring them forward and give them a real job to do in an environment where kind of white collar is always seen as better than blue collar, which I don't agree with. I think the Germans have part of the answer, which is a really good apprenticeship schemes. But those practical skills we still need. And those are morphing to some extent into electronic skills.
Okay.
One of the things we, of course, offer is we offer fantastic employment in small towns. So very often, we are the town. I mean, we are the tax, we'll be 70-80% of the tax base for the town. And of course, we'll be a huge part of the sort of working capital of the town. So I think that's an attractive thing, but we have to stay competitive. So that's always the issue, is you're basically a town, but you have to be globally competitive, and that sometimes means we have to make some tough choices.
Okay.
But education, I think, will be the number one. The overall business environment, friendly, unfriendly, permitting, the fact that stuff needs to work, I mean, all that. But,
What do you mean by stuff?
well, I mean, just that the infrastructure's
Okay.
there, that the roads are there, that I mean, if I look at, I think, quite frankly, the state's doing a brilliant job at that.
Okay.
So, I see all these jobs coming in here, in this very area, practically across the street, actually. So all credit to you, I think.
Well, is there anything else that South Carolina can do to attract more Domtars to the area? Or not necessarily more Domtars, but more big business?
I don't think so, no. I would just say don't let, I think it's a very difficult thing, right? Why do people love this area? They love it because it's not too big and it's not too small. It's kind of Goldilocks, right? It's not, you can still get around, but it's got a decent theater. It's got a football team. It's got a basketball team. But it's not massive. You can get downtown in 15 minutes, right? Can you maintain that feeling when you're looking for growth? I think that's that's not easy.
No, that's a tight loop.
And I think people have to be conscious of that. Because I think just, to my mind, bigness on its own is not really particularly compelling. Just being big. Because, we know there are bigger towns up and down the East Coast where actually people now don't want to live for that very reason. So why are people coming here? For that very reason. If too many of them come, you lose it. So I would say just think about that balance.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here at Beyond the Pages. Mr.
Oh.
Williams, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for listening. I greatly appreciate it. Gosh, that was very speedy.